Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And recently, I added a new part, a new segment, a new episode, new segment to this channel called Ask Peter, which is where you guys can either direct message me, email me, or leave it in the comment section of my video and ask me something that you would like me to share some advice or some suggestions on, just based on my own personal experience. Anything that I share is just based on my own personal experience in life, so take it with a grain of salt. Don't make any life decisions based on what I say, take it in, think it over. I'm just gonna kind of give you my thoughts. I was looking through comments on this channel earlier, and I got a comment yesterday, an Ask Peter comment. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to answer this one, and this will be my video for today. Ask Peter question. First of all, I just want to say I love that they put at the beginning of it, Ask Peter question. I was like, here we go, right here we go, it's right here. When things go wrong repeatedly in my love life, it makes me feel like I shouldn't even try. How have you pushed, I feel like, I don't know why all of a sudden, but I watch so many pageants. I watch so many pageants, a lot of drag pageants, and this reminds me of Q&A, the question and answer part of a pageant. This, I don't know why. How have you, and what would you define as the most important part of your life? Contestant number 12. I don't know why it reminds me of that, but it does. Okay. Ask Peter question. When things go wrong repeatedly in my love life, it makes me feel like I shouldn't even try. How have you pushed through feeling like failure is always a sign to give up? Okay, so I guess when I first read this question, I thought you meant like several relationships have not worked out, and so you feel like a failure. I think the way that I'm reading it now is you're saying, when things go repeatedly wrong in your love life, I'm reading that as like with one partner that you're with, it makes you feel like you shouldn't even try. How have you pushed through feeling like failure is always a sign to give up? So, okay, I'm going to answer this two different ways. I'm going to answer it from the point of view, first of all, being in a relationship, because I don't know which way you're asking me, but I think I kind of am leaning towards that. Sorry. So like in my relationship with Alex today, first of all, I will say this, that I don't love when people refer to relationships that have ended as failed relationships. It's just a personal thing that I have. I think that there are toxic, abusive relationships that people get out of, and you are not to blame if you're in, unless you're the toxic, abusive person. But if you're the counterpart, the victim in that situation, or the survivor of a toxic, abusive relationship, that's not a failure on your part. And I think often, many of us are in toxic, abusive relationships, and we take on a lot of blame for that. We think we're responsible for the toxicity or the relationship, often because we'll watch what they do afterwards. And some of those toxic people, even abusive people, will go on to have what seems like apparently healthy relationships. And so then we get in our heads and we think, well, was it because of me? Were they that way because of me? Did I drive them out of them? But what I know today to be true is that those thoughts are from childhood trauma. They are from the wounds and the patterns of growing up in situations, where you constantly are blaming yourself. Growing up in the home of an alcoholic and being an adult child of an alcoholic, there were times that I was young, 5, 6 years old, where if my mom was drinking, I would think it was because I got in trouble at school or something, like as a child, you don't connect that. So we carry that into adulthood. So sometimes as victims, we think, that it's because that's our fault. So when people are in abusive or toxic relationships, a lot of times they take on that blame. You have no blame for that whatsoever. To make that very, very clear. I'm not insinuating that about you, but I'm talking to anybody out there that's in that situation or has been in that situation. But, other than that though, and just the normal breaking up of a relationship, I don't love when people refer to like failed marriages, failed relationships, stuff like that. I think the reason why is because I think that, number one, I think it takes both parties working towards the success of a relationship, okay? And that can be a marriage, that can be before you're married, that could be dating for a month or two, that could be dating for 18 years, whatever. I think that both partners have to work really hard for the success of the relationship. I don't think any one person is to blame or any one person is a failure. I think there are situations that can occur in a relationship, like cheating, betrayal, things like that, that could lead to the breaking up. But it doesn't necessarily, for me, define failure in a relationship. I don't love when people say that, because then they'll say, well, then none of it was true. Well, you were with somebody for 10 years and none of it was true. Like, there wasn't one true moment in 10 years. I just don't believe that. The other reason why I don't love the idea of calling past relationships failures is because I'm in today a 17-year relationship. We'll have been married 13 years and together 17 years in August. And it has not been easy, okay? There have been easy times. There have been fantastic times. There have been low lows as well, and very difficult times. Times standing in this bedroom where both of us were willing to give it up. And we thought we just can't continue to go on. Now, it's been many, many years since those days. But there have been those times in this relationship. I think that my past 2 relationships that I had, that I wouldn't even consider them failures, you know? My first boyfriend after I got sober, he and I just wanted different things. He and I was talking about this in my vlog the other night, you know? He wanted to be a DJ and he wanted to go to these big parties, and I didn't want that, you know? We wanted completely different things. And he saw it before I did, in all honesty. He saw that. In my last relationship, we had just really fallen apart. Like, we didn't hate each other. We just had become really good friends. And we both loved each other dearly, but there was just something missing that I think that we both felt like we deserved, and we weren't finding it in each other anymore. But I don't consider either of those relationships failures. Before I got sober, I don't know, it was a different kind of relationship. So I really just kind of look at those 2 relationships. But I learned so much about myself, about who I am in a relationship, about how to listen to somebody else. And in marriage counseling, I've learned that as well. And how to be in a relationship today. I'm not perfect. My husband's not perfect, but we learn and we grow. And so I think that those past relationships aren't failures, because they taught me more about who I am and who I want to be in a relationship and what I want from a relationship today. So I don't refer to past relationships as failures. Today in my relationship, first of all, my questions would be, if this is about you in a relationship, have you and your partner sought any kind of relationship counseling? I think to say I'm going to give up, that it's always interesting to me when I hear that a couple has, like, they just are done, like they've called it quits, and they weren't willing to try any kind of therapy, anything. I mean, whatever works for you. Church, God, therapy, a retreat, crystals, whatever works for you. But to not try anything at all, that to me is where the failure is that you're not willing to put the effort into trying to make it work, if that makes sense. If you have done that and you've tried time and time again to make things work, I think to step back from it, you know, this is where in recovery, inventory is vital for me. You know, in a situation like this, well, first of all, I can tell you my sponsor would say, if we were in that position, you guys need to be in couples counseling more than you already are. Because in recovery, we highly recommend outside help for things that cannot be dealt with in a 12-step program. It's why I'm in individual counseling. It's why we're in couples counseling. So I think that would be the first recommendation. But my sponsor would also say, well, let's inventory, you know, let's inventory. What are you doing? What are you doing that's making you feel like a failure? Make a list of that. What are the things that you are trying that are not working? Make a list of it. Really, what are you putting in this relationship? What are you putting into your relationships? What are you putting into the success of your relationships? If you are feeling like a failure, how do you define that? How do you define I'm a failure in love life? Like, what does that mean to you? I don't think that anybody is a failure in any kind of love life, whether they're with a partner or they're alone and have had multiple breakups. I don't think any one person is to blame for that, and I don't think any one person is a failure. I think giving up is a completely different idea, and I don't necessarily know that I call it giving up. I sometimes call it giving in. I think sometimes it's giving in to the truth. When my husband and I entered marriage counseling, and I've shared this a lot, when we entered marriage counseling, we made a decision on that very first session that we were going to give it everything that we had for a year. Because I'm a believer in time settings. So, you know, if there's something I want to do, I'll set a date, I'll circle it on the calendar and be like, by next year, if I haven't done it, then I'm going to change tactics. I'm going to do something different. But we both came up with that, and we're like, we're going to give it everything that we have for a year. And that means going to all the counseling sessions, showing up, being present, being an active participant. When he gives us the assignments, do the assignments, going on date nights, trying to be intimate with each other, trying to work on forgiveness and removal of resentment. We're going to do everything that we possibly can in a year to make this relationship work, because this is how invested we are in this relationship. If at the end of the year, we both sit here and we agree that we are no further than we are the day that we started, or more than the day we started, then we need to go our separate ways. We need to give in to the truth. It's not giving up, it's giving in to the truth. And the truth is that we just don't work together well. That we're just not meant to be together. You know, and I'm not a big believer, I used to be, in fairy tales and fate. You know, my husband kind of shared with me, and it devastated me when we first got together. He said to me, you know, I'm not a big believer in soulmates and fate. He's like, I think two people kind of cross paths at the same time, and they choose to be together, and they have a good time, and they like each other, and then they choose to make a commitment to each other. I was devastated when he told me that, because I wanted a soulmate. But what I know today is that a soulmate doesn't have to be something that falls from the stars. It can be something that you work on, you know? And I have my soulmate today, and that is my husband, you know? And that's not because it just was fate, and it was destiny, it was meant to be. I banked on relationships working because I felt like they were supposed to be. There was some kismet about it. There was something magical about it. No, they take a lot of work. And it also takes a lot of work on ourselves. You cannot be in a healthy relationship if you are not working on yourself. I'm a true believer that you first must be of value to yourself before you can be of value to somebody else. I have to be taking care of myself and be healthy. I'm looking over here. He's not here, but I have to be healthy myself before I can be a healthy participant in my marriage. My husband has to be, that's his side of the bed, has to be a healthy person himself before he can be a healthy participant in a relationship. So we each have to be checking ourselves so that we can work together as one. But I do think that there comes a time when you put so much into it. I would never give up on, if you're single out there, maybe I'm reading your question wrong, but if you're single and you're saying, I'm just willing to give up on love for the rest of my life, you don't ever know that the next person that walks through the door isn't the person that is going to make you happy. You don't ever know that. Don't ever give up on the possibility of love or companionship, you know? My mom said to me years ago, none of us are promised a partner in life. And she was absolutely correct, you know? Absolutely correct. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. And I would never give up on that idea. But I do think that there comes a time in certain relationships where you have to say, you know, my ex and I, we did not do marriage counseling. We did not do couples counseling. I think it might have changed some things. I don't know, you know, but I think, like, I remember the day that we broke up, and he knew it and I knew it. And it wasn't nasty. It was civil. And I think that was both of us just giving into the truth that too much had happened, and it was unfixable at that point. And, you know, it was nothing like, I think that's the other thing, is that people sometimes think it has to be this huge thing. There was nothing huge that happened between us, you know? We just weren't passionate for each other anymore. We were really great friends. You know, I think the saddest thing for me was that I felt like I was losing the greatest friend that I'd ever had in my life, you know, besides my best friend Tanya at that time. And so it was hard, but I didn't also believe that I could be with somebody for the rest of my life and not have any kind of intimacy or passion. I felt like I deserved it, and I felt like he deserved it, and he felt the same way. You know, my ex before that, it wasn't nasty. We just wanted different things. I think in the moment that he said it to me, I realized I can either try really hard to be what he wants me to be, and that is so not who I am, that I'm going to be sacrificing my own happiness to just show up for the ride, and he still might not be happy, you know? Or, you know, and I'll tell you what's so funny about that ex. He now lives in Florida, and he's married to somebody that's Venezuelan, which is crazy. But I remember about 6 months after we broke up, and he was, you know, done running around and DJ. I mean, he's still a DJ, but going to parties and stuff like that. And he was like, he was living with like 2 other guys, and he was like, they are so messy. He came up to me, we were out one night. He came up to me and he was like, they're so messy, and the apartment's always a mess. And he was like, I just really miss you taking care of things. He's like, you were such a great like caretaker at home. And I was like, in that moment I thought, I mean, I don't know how old I was at the time. Let's see. I was probably 27 or 28. And I was like, what a compliment. I'm such a good homemaker. But, you know, that is one of the things that I'm proud of today. You know, that I make the bed. I make the things nice. Alex always says, the house always looks so nice when you come home. Those are the things that matter to me today. You know, I don't necessarily think that you should ever give up on a relationship. I think it's giving into the truth sometimes, and giving into, we've done everything that we can. Not every couple is supposed to be together for the rest of your life, you know? I've met some couples that I thought were supposed to be together forever, and they just one day got divorced. Even though they had been in marriage counseling for years, they got divorced, and they're happily with other people, or one of them's single and happy. And, you know, I don't know. I think sometimes we try to make things work where it just isn't going to work, you know? If Alex and I had gotten to the end of that year and there was nothing left, we would have gone our separate ways. That day came and went. We didn't even discuss it. And it's 8 or 9, 10 years later, and we're still together, you know? If that day came again, we would discuss it. And I think that's important. I think you have to check and see, how much am I really putting into this? But if you're in a relationship, ask yourself, are we doing everything we possibly can? And then if you've done everything you possibly can, then I think you have to ask yourself, is it worth staying, or should I give in to, and have a discussion with your partner. If you're single and you're thinking about giving up on love, don't ever give up on love. Don't ever. Love is one of the most magical things in the entire world. And love doesn't have to be in the form. I think we are so fixated on having to have romantic, intimate love with a partner in life. And like my mom said, you know, some of us are never promised that in our life. But I have love for my neighbors. I have love for my friends. I have love for, you know, I have love for so many people, and so many people have love for me. And sometimes that love feels equal or just as great. You know, it's a different kind of love than romantic love. So don't ever rule out love in your life. And it might come when you least expect it. Anyway, thank you for the question. I hope that helped a little bit. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.